Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Today, we have some bold predictions.
Let's go.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? I got my hoodie on. Spent 20 minutes talking to Rick about Dynasty.
Yep.
No, we're not going to talk about that at all today.
Nope.
My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. What's poppin', Rick?
What's up? Yeah, I don't know why you're wearing a hoodie when it's like 95 degrees out.
It's ridiculously hot.
Yeah.
I hate to be that like YouTube channel / podcast that talks about the weather. Beginning of episodes, because I feel like that's like a cliche.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah,
but,
true.
But anyway,
Forget
he's not wrong. It's like 104 degrees outside right now, and I'm wearing a hoodie.
Yeah, I don't know what you're doing, dog.
It's got to cover up the dad bod, is what you got to do.
Oh, okay. I see.
It's true. I don't even have kids. That's the horrible part. It's the Chipotle, man.
Listen, I'm not gonna hate for you.
I can't.
On your Chipotle grind.
We got some stuff to get into in this episode. We are going to talk about some news, a little bit of news pertaining to Antonio Brown. But we'll talk about that probably at the end of the episode. We are going to give you our bold predictions today, though, as stated earlier. And these are not necessarily going to be takes that are consensus. They're not necessarily going to be things that will happen, but they're things that we think will happen, hence bold predictions. So don't get offended.
Yeah, so when we talk about bold predictions, like you said, it's just they're bold predictions. Like we're not banking our money that this is going to happen, but
I'm putting everything I have on this.
Oh, you are? Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Be sure, before we jump into our bold predictions, be sure to check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Chance. You can follow me, Morgan Colby _FF, Ricky Lemon _FF. You can like us at facebook.com / the Fantasy Champions, and like us or follow us, whatever you do on Instagram, at the Fantasy Champions. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform, please, we beg you, leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like and comment. Please comment down below. Give us your bold prediction for the 2020 season, and we will be much appreciative
I want to hear some
of that.
Bold predictions in the comments.
Yeah, and back it up, too, with facts. Don't just say Le'Veon Bell is going to be a top 3 back. Back it up.
Bro, Le'Veon Bell's going to be top 3 back.
That for sure won't happen, and that's not even a bold take. Rick, tell us about the draft guide.
Guys, you need to buy this draft guide.
Yes, sir.
Look, so it's still $25. Price has not changed.
It's not going to change.
It is live. If you guys want to know what's in it, we got full rankings, breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. If you guys order now, you can be in the listener league.
Yep, definitely.
So tell your friends.
By the way, every other draft guide out there that offers itself up is probably around $35. So you save yourself $10 and get our draft guide. Simple. It is very simple. Let's jump right into our bold predictions for the 2020 season. This is always the funnest episode, I'll tell you.
It's definitely.
We are allowed to say the most ridiculous things. We have to back it up with facts, of course.
Sure.
Only facts. But what were you going to say?
But we can say ridiculous things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the episode where we're allowed to say ridiculous things. There are people who on Twitter every day think they're allowed to say ridiculous things, but that's not true. So we'll go back and forth. We have 3 each. I actually have 4. I haven't decided on one. So I'll start. Okay. I'll start if that's all right with you. We should have flipped a coin or something. That would have been.
No, you can start.
Better. But anyway, you know me. I like to ramble. So my first one, and I took some time to think about this, and it actually was kind of interesting to me because he's essentially this player is essentially what Calvin Ridley is to Julio Jones in Atlanta without the hype. And his name is Christian Kirk. And I think my bold prediction for Christian Kirk is that he's going to be a top 12 wide receiver in the 2020 fantasy football season. Now that's some bold sauce.
It's definitely bold. Yeah, especially the top 12.
I'm a little scared for myself right now, trying to figure out why this guy is going to be that. So the biggest change, obviously in Arizona this year was DeAndre Hopkins. And I think that's the biggest obvious change that's scaring people away from Christian Kirk. I don't say this because I own him in like 2 dynasty leagues.
I own him in a dynasty league too. So
I say this because I really like Christian Kirk. Last year he was, I think he played a total of 13 games and he was pacing at 133 targets. He ended up with 108 targets and 68 receptions last year. In Calvin Ridley's rookie year, in Kyler Murray's rookie year. Some of the most important stats that stand out for this guy, his 10.4 yards per reception. He has the ability to catch the ball in the red zone. His catch percentage is relatively decent. That could probably go up, and I think it will with Kyler Murray getting some improvements. But the big thing is the 133 targets that he had last year. I think when you look at Larry Fitzgerald, the sun is setting for Mr. Fitzgerald, and he probably will not get the same amount. I mean, they brought in DeAndre Hopkins, so he's probably not going to get the same amount of target share. And I think what you're going to see from Christian Kirk is he'll stay steady. He's not going to get 150 plus targets. I don't think that'll happen. Right. But when we're talking about a top 12 wide receiver, which is essentially, I said top 12, right?
Yep.
My bold prediction. So when you're talking about a top 12 receiver, all he really needs to do is get 6 touchdowns and over 1,100 yards. And I think that is very capable for him to do in this offense in Arizona. I think that a lot of, like Christian Kirk last year, he had on the flip side, Larry Fitzgerald, right? And, he was getting matched up with high-end cornerbacks, and now he's not going to get that. They're going to be on Nuke. They're going to go after Hopkins. And Christian Kirk's going to get the number 2 or 3 guy in every single game, which is he's talented and he's going to get open. So for me, I think he's going to get the same target share. He's going to play all 16. I mean, there were games where he was getting 12, 13 targets, or I should say 11 or 12 targets in a game. I think there was 5 games this year where he had 10 or more targets and 7 games where he had 9 or more targets. So he was up there in the target share for most of the season, and that held. So I think Christian Kirk's definitely there in terms of what he can do. I think the biggest thing is just going to be hoping that Larry Fitzgerald doesn't take targets away from Christian Kirk at this point, and that they just target Christian Kirk as the second wide receiver in the offense and Fitz as 3. But I think it's very likely. It's within his range of outcomes to be a wide receiver 1 this year, and I think it will happen.
Okay. I mean, I like the argument. I'm a big Kyler guy, and I do love Christian Kirk, so I hope that's true because I have some Christian Kirk shares. So for my first one, I don't know how spicy this is.
You'll go easy on him first, right?
Yeah, I mean...
He'll ease him in. I just went right at it. I just shot him in the...
I'm going to say Jameson Crowder is a top 20 fantasy wide receiver this year. I'll tell you why. First of all, last season, Crowder had 122 targets last year, which is more than some people I think realize. And last year, Sam Darnold also missed 3 games. In the 3 games that Sam Darnold missed, Crowder had 4 catches, 2 catches for 10 yards, 25 yards, and 40 yards in each game. So he really didn't do anything in those games that Darnold missed. And then when Darnold came back first game, Crowder had 6 catches for 98 yards. And then he kind of
is this a bold take
paced
for
out
PPR
at about like 5 to 8 receptions per game. The Jets also, who has the most vacated targets going into 2020?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say it's the New York Jets.
Nope, it's the Cowboys. But the Jets are second. The Jets
I tried.
Yeah. The Jets have 172 vacated targets. So that's a lot. I think Rashad Perriman's going to get some of that. Denzel Mims will get some of that. But I still think there might be like 15 ish targets to go around for Jameson Crowder, because I mean, when we look at last year, that Crowder was Darnold's security blanket on third downs, on big plays. He was always looking for Crowder in the slot. It was kind of like a Brady Edelman thing, but on a much lower scale. But it was kind of similar play styles. So also one more thing is the Jets as a team last season threw for 19 touchdown passes and 3,400 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Darnold this year, if he plays a full 16 games, can throw for like close to 4,000, not even 4,000, like let's say 3,700, 3,800 and like 25 touchdown passes?
I think it's reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a Darnold fan, I think he can go to sleep, but that's just me as a Sam Darnold fan.
I think, and you're also obsessed with Denzel Mims. I think it's a matter of whether Mims gets a lot of work on the onset, you know. But I do agree with you. Like the only. We've talked about how Jameson Crowder is a gross pick, and I don't think it's unreasonable at all for him to finish in the top 20. Like, I think he may even finish in the top, like, 16. But it's just a matter of efficiency. And it's like how his yards per reception last year, I think, was extremely gross.
It's still gonna be low, I think, for this year, because he plays similar to, like I said, Julian Edelman.
Yeah, it's true.
He plays in the slot, and he like those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 plays, like Darnold will throw to him. In PPR, he's fantastic. Standard, it's a little different because he's not going to get a ton of yards.
Yeah,
but in PPR and even half PPR leagues, I think he's gonna get a solid like 10 points a week.
Okay. Very reasonable, I guess.
Kind of gross.
It is a gross, bold prediction. I will say that.
There's also like the targets there are not. Like, unless you think Brashard Perriman's going to get 120 targets.
Brashard Perriman's going to play the same exact role he did when, what was it? Mike Evans was hurt, and he had to come in and fill in for, maybe, was there a game where they both missed time, Evans and Godwin?
Like, Demaryius Thomas last year for the Jets had 59 targets. Like, I think Perriman's probably going to play that role. He'll get, like, around 60, 65, 70.
I think he actually might take, If we were to sit here and project based on what last year happened, I think Mims will take the Demaryius Thomas role with maybe 10 or 15 more targets. And then I think that you'll see Brashard Perriman take a role more similar to Robbie Anderson as an outside receiver. So I think that's more likely to happen. I know you and others really like Mims, but rookie wide receivers are it's going to take them a little bit to jump in.
I could see Mims kind of taking a backseat in his first year, especially with Adam Gase. Like, I don't really fully trust them.
But there's also a reality where he turns into Terry Mclaren and, the wide receiver one because there's no one here.
But either way, there's going to be targets for Crowder. I mean, he had 122 last year, which if he does that again, he can still get, like, I think he had 80 catches last year, around there. Yeah. He had, 78 catches. So if he does that again, playing with Darnold for the full 16, because those 3 games that he didn't play with Darnold, he was terrible in. So let's say he plays a full 16 and he gets 122 targets. So he pretty much does the same thing. He'll probably get around 85 receptions. He might get another touchdown or 2. So he might, and he finished as like the wide receiver 30 last year. So that alone would get him like in the top 25. If he just gets like 10, 15 more targets, right, he's going to finish in the top 20.
Okay. Let's talk about my second bold prediction here. Cam Newton will finish with more fantasy points than Tom Brady.
I love Brady, but I also love this take, so.
You know what? I'm glad you like it because you kind of disagree is what you told me.
I just because I like Brady this year, but like it's a very good take. I like the take.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about Cam Newton and we talked a lot about Tom Brady this offseason and the effects that he's had. So I wanted to look at some of the numbers here that Tom Brady has had since 2000. I think it was 2014. And he had, starting back from 2014, in 2014 he had a QB9 finish. He had a QB2 finish in 15. In 16 he had a QB15 finish. In 2017, he had a QB3 finish. This is Tom Brady's numbers, by the way, in case I didn't clarify that. And then in 2018, he had the QB14. In 2019, he had the QB12. Now, there's something notable that you put a little asterisk next to 18 and 19 we noticed a big change in the way that people play the game of football at the quarterback position, ushered in preliminarily by Russell Wilson, but then solidified by Patrick Mahomes in 2018, is the mobile, get out of the pocket, quarterback. And Lamar Jackson really solidified that last year, but that is what's becoming the top 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks, in fantasy football. I mean, you talk about, Russell Wilson, Dak, all of them, or the top 5 from last year, Russell Wilson, Dak, Lamar Jackson, those guys, all Josh Allen, even was he 6 or 5? I can't remember, but those guys are all guys that can get out of the pocket, make plays with their feet. And they score touchdowns on the ground. They get rushing yards. They have a floor rushing, where Tom Brady does not have that. And so I think and he's also 100 years old. So in the last 2 seasons, he was the QB 14 and the QB 12. I usually like to fade older quarterbacks. I was surprised to find out in 2017 he finished as the QB 3. What the crap happened that season?
Yeah, that's surprising.
So anyway, yeah, I think he's going to be more in that range of QB 10 to QB 15, if we were to be honest with ourselves. I understand Cam Newton's coming off an injury, 2 injuries, and I understand that the Patriots are taking a shot at him, and there are some arguments from New England-based reporters, which I think are completely friggin' fabricated and false, that Cam Newton's not going to be the week 1 starter. Freaking stupid crap like that.
I mean, I don't know. I would like for him to be.
Let's just assume it's Bill Belichick. My take based on Cam Newton playing, so let's just assume he plays.
But it is Bill Belichick. Like he could easily do something like that.
So the big thing about Cam Newton is when he's healthy and he plays all 16 games, he always finishes as a top 5 wide receiver. He's never played a game where a season where he's played 60. He's never had a season where he's played 16 full games and finished outside of the top 5. So there is a realm for me, and it's not an unreasonable one, where Cam Newton comes in this year. The Patriots cater their offense to what Cam Newton likes to do. He gets a top 6, top 7, maybe even a top 5 finish. Maybe the injuries hurt him and he ends up top 7, right? Based on his rushing, plays all 16. Tom Brady is not going to finish as a top 5 quarterback this year. He's just not. And people who tell yourselves that that's going to happen, you're getting, you might get good value in the later rounds with Tom Brady, but don't tell yourself that you're getting more than you're bargaining for, because there's so many more quarterbacks in the league that have a higher a higher floor.
Unless he throws for 40 touchdowns.
Unless he throws for 40 touchdowns. Very reasonable. But Jameis, the famous Winston last year, is about 100 years younger than him. And he threw 30 touchdowns last year. So can Brady throw 30 to 35 touchdowns? Very reasonable. I don't think he throws 40. I really don't. Yeah. So I think Brady's capped by his inability to move the ball on the ground. I think that in fantasy football, you're going to get a decent 10 to 15 out of Tom Brady. He's a good quarterback to have when you need a decent floor or a good matchup week. But what you're actually going to get from Tom Brady and what you're going to get from Cam Newton is going to be 2 other things. So Cam Newton will finish with more fantasy points than Tom Brady this year if he plays a full 16. I'll make a note of that.
Okay. Yeah.
And that this take means I think he's going to finish with a full 16 games.
If Cam Newton does, I think that's very, very possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one is kind of a popular take. So I kind of feel iffy about it just because there's a lot of people joining this bandwagon. And you were talking about before this show that you're really on this bandwagon. So if you want to hop in, you totally can while making an argument.
Of course.
My next bold prediction is Miles Sanders will finish as a top 5.
I'll even ask you a question after I'm done arguing my love
in fantasy football.
I'm gonna spend maybe a minute and a half talking about Miles Sanders. It'll be very fast.
That's fine.
Even though I could do a entire 50-minute podcast just about Miles Sanders.
We have talked about Miles Sanders in the show multiple times, so you can always go back and get in detail for some things. But I'll quickly just say some people are concerned with Miles Sanders getting carries. We talked about how Doug Peterson has never had a running back where he can give the workload to.
RBBC.
So we don't know if he's actually an RBBC guy or he just has never had a good running back.
Yeah.
The Eagles had 454 carries last season.
Wow.
Do you think Boston Scott is going to get 200 carries?
No, but I think somebody on the free agent or waiver, whatever. I was going to say waiver wire. Somebody in free agency can do it, but not Boston Scott.
So let's say they don't sign anyone. You think Boston Scott? I gave him like 100 carries.
I think like Boston Scott might get 150 carries, but even at that, how many rushes did they have last year?
450. But Carson, you
give 50 to Carson Wentz.
About 60. He's 60 last
year. When I project, I usually take the number of rushes out of his passing and not the rushing. So I just add that total. Like, say I project him to have 550 pass attempts, and you know that Carson Wentz is going to rush it 50 times. I just take it out of the pass attempts and add it to the rushing total.
Interesting.
Generally
but
speaking.
Either way, so let's say Boston Scott gets like 150 carries, Carson Wentz gets around 60, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think Miles Sanders can still get like 240, 250 carries.
He's going to get more than that. He might hit like 280.
I said, like, he could definitely get more than that. But I think at worst, if they don't sign anybody, he's probably going to get around that.
You're just being conservative.
I am being conservative.
Which is smart. Very smart.
He also had 50 receptions last year. And I've heard some people make the argument that that's going to change now that they have receivers. But
yeah,
does that change for any other receiving running back? Like,
no,
not really. Like Joe Mixon, there's a lot of targets there. He still gets like 40 plus catches. So and Sanders is still going to be involved in the offense. He's still going to get around 50 receptions this year. Last year when Jordan Howard went down and they gave the keys to Miles Sanders, he was the RB4 in fantasy. So, in half PPR. And he can do it. If it was just a short amount of time, though, I think it was only 5 weeks. But it's very possible that he can do that for a full 16, and I think he will.
Get me excited about Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy there. And it's also a very good offense, too. Like, don't realize now that the Eagles they're going to be a really good offense.
You could have just stopped at, is Boston Scott going to get 150 touches?
Yeah.
Like, the only concern I have with Miles Sanders is durability. Like, I'm not really concerned in the context that I think he's injury prone or I think he's going to have injuries. I mean in the context of like, can he hold up on a Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette type workload?
Yeah.
But that's the only concern I have. Like, I think it's a reasonable possibility that he gets 270 touches. But the big shock factor for me with Miles Sanders is how much not getting a lot of work, missing a few games last year, right? He only played he played all 16, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So, but it was the amount of opportunity that he was getting on the ground. It was given to him early in the season, 11, 12 times a game, and then it was taken away. And then, when, like you said, when, what's his name? Jordan Howard got hurt, then he took over. But the big thing that I found shocking was in the early part of the season, they weren't using him a whole ton in the passing game. It wasn't until week 5 that they got him really, really involved. And he ended up with roughly, if you pace him out, 71 targets for 60 receptions. And I was telling you before the show, I could very well see Miles Sanders being what I think is Christian McCaffrey light, where he could get 70 catches this year, and to add on top of that, have 275. A poor man's yeah, right. So it's like, do you remember when Christian McCaffrey broke out?
Oh, I remember it like it's yesterday.
Because you drafted him. He was a mid-second round pick that year.
I think he was in the third in our league.
In our league, he was in the third, but in a 12 team, he was mid-second round. And by the time we got to actual draft, the week before the NFL season, when most people should draft, his ADP had reached up to early second round. And people were falling in love with Christian McCaffrey, at least people in leagues with, people who study fantasy football on a regular basis. I think this is thing, I can't remember what it's called, but it's more accurate ADP for gamblers. But in best ball, ADP, early, close to the season, he was ADPing at early in the second round. My point is that people expected Christian McCaffrey to break out and have a really good season, even though he hadn't really he'd shown signs of doing something like that. I think in that season he ended up top 4 and he was a league winner essentially. I think you could see that same thing from Christian McCaffrey. And if you end up drafting, Miles Sanders. I think you could see that same thing for Miles Sanders. And I think later, getting him later in the first round, earlier in the second is a perfect spot for him. At first I was starting to get gross on Miles Sanders and think like, that's not worth it. But man, get your guy. Like if you think Miles Sanders is going to be that top 4 guy Rick was just talking about, then press the button in the late first round. I mean, it's not too hard.
Yeah. I mean,
hurts a little.
It does. Yeah. And then also like they've talked about how I think the direct quote from Doug Peterson. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's see if I can pull it up. Yeah, he said like we are very comfortable and excited about Miles, and what he can do moving forward. So like I think they're
keep talking.
Perfectly fine with giving him a significant amount of work.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see what happens. But the Dalvin Cook last year, Christian McCaffrey 2017. Like I draw parallels to that, and usually what happens is there's some ridiculous thing. We don't have a preseason this year, but there's always some ridiculous play that happens that, like, do you remember preseason week 3 last year? We had our draft party that day. The day before, they had Vikings had a preseason game on. I think it was the afternoon of our draft day, and I was watching the Vikings play, and they handed it off to Dalvin Cook for the first run of the game or something like that. And he ran for 89 yards for a touchdown, and then he took him out. And I was like, how do I get him on my team? So we won't have that with Miles Sanders, I don't think, but you get the picture. I think Miles Sanders is going to end up being ridiculously good this year.
For sure. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
And then the third one, I'm going to leave the last one out, but the third one for me is Paris Campbell will have a top 24 season in 2020. Now, I have a little bit of trouble with this one in terms of efficiency, because last year, Paris Campbell, he's a slot receiver, and he is right now, according to our lads' depth charts, he's the starting slot receiver next to Michael Pittman will be on the outside, and T.Y. will obviously be on the outside, but Paris Campbell's going to play the inside slot role, and he's the starting slot receiver. He had horrible efficiency last year, but he didn't get a lot of opportunities. I think he had one game where he had there was 10 targets in his direction. I can look it up. I can't remember exactly what the number was. But he had roughly, I'm going to pull it up just for the sake of my own brain. But there was one game where he had more than 5 targets, which is ridiculous. He had 8 targets. Highest total of the season, 8 targets, 5 receptions. He averaged 5 yards a carry in that game on the season. He had a couple of games where he had 10 and 12, but he had 7 total yards per reception on the season. That is horrible. It's very bad. That's like Jameson Crowder bad. So the thing I really like about Paris Campbell is that they just picked up a quarterback by the name of Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers made Keenan Allen a freaking legend wide receiver 1, low end most of the time, but because he was a slot receiver. Keenan Allen's a slot receiver. And what does Phillip Rivers do best? He dumps off to running backs, and he dumps off to his slot receivers because he can't throw it more than 46.5 inches down the field. So he's just not, he's not going to be able to throw it down the field to T.Y. And I think as much as we really like Michael Pittman, I don't know that he's going to get super involved in this offense this year just because of the way that what's his name? Literally just said his name, Phillip Rivers. So that leaves one man. T.Y. is going to get his work because he's T.Y. Hilton, but Paris Campbell is the man left in the lurch here in terms of where the rest of the production is going to go. If 580 attempts or 560 attempts go to Phillip Rivers, and he tries to throw that many passes, Paris Campbell could be very well on his way to 100 to 120 targets, especially if they utilize him in the slot the same kind of way that Keenan Allen was utilized in the slot. The biggest thing I like about Paris Campbell is that he had a 100th percentile speed score. He ran 97th percentile speed score and 100th percentile 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.31. So he's one of those wide receivers that can catch a ball in the slot and then turn it into a touchdown. You know what I mean? He's extremely fast. His player comp on playerprofiler.com is Santana Moss. So I think he has the ability to be an extremely... He's also 6 feet tall, which is generally tall for a wide receiver, I think.
Sure. It's like about it. I mean,
it's tall for a slot receiver, I'll say that.
For a slot guy, yeah. Slot is usually kind of tiny.
So he's going to play the slot. He's going to be I think he's probably going to be one of Phillip Rivers' favorite targets this year. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of passing up on him. Like I think top 24 is a very reasonable, very reasonable conversation to have. Like, and I wanted to say top 15. I really did, but
well, that's a little much.
I just don't think that Paris Campbell can get to that point this year unless he hits 120 plus targets.
Phillip Rivers likes the slot, and if Paris Campbell's going to start in the slot, he's going to get targets.
Yeah. So I definitely think, we'll see if he can use his explosiveness. The biggest, like I said, that biggest concern for me was the explosiveness wasn't really on display in terms of what he had last year. You know what I mean? Like, there were 2 games at the end of the season. He had week 9 and week 14. Week 9, he had 10 yards per reception, which is what you want to see from your slot receiver. But he just didn't do that the rest of the time. So it's like, and they also played a little bit around with his, him in rushing and end arounds and all that stuff. So he could have a decent floor rushing, but he's generally speaking a clean slate in an offense where he'll probably be the wide receiver too. So I think it's exciting to look at Paris Campbell and think that he has opportunity. And definitely in redraft, like, it is worth drafting him in the late rounds. Because if you end up with a mid to late, a mid-range to late wide receiver 2, you're getting great value out of him. He could be a decent flex for your team, for a majority of the season. So,
yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense. It's a good take. And my last one might be the spiciest one. It's Terry McLaurin will finish as a top 7 fantasy.
Spiciest one for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Either for me, yeah, you had the spicier takes on these for sure.
I tried,
but for me, McLaurin.
I try to be ridiculous.
I'll make it. I'm going to say top 5.
You know, my favorite part about this is
top 5.
Later. Whoa.
Just because you were getting on me about that, I'm making it bold, bro. This is bold prediction.
I was going to say, I like going back and listening to this show after the season and see how much we actually got right.
Last year we were like 50-50, which is surprising for bold predictions.
My Mahomes take panned out.
Yeah. I don't remember what I said at all last year at this time, but but for Terry McLaurin, I'll tell you why. And I'll say why it's not fully as crazy as you might think.
Right.
So his yards per reception, we'll just start off with his stats last year. He had 93 targets in 14 games. I don't know what that's prorated to, probably like around 100.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. With 7 touchdowns, he had almost 16 yards per reception, which is really good. He almost had 1,000 yards receiving in 14 games. He probably would have prorated to over 1,000 yards if he played the full 16. One of the things with Terry McLaurin this year is who else are they going to throw the ball to? I mean, they threw the ball a very low amount last year.
Steven Sims, dude. Don't you know?
They threw the ball like
Antonio Gandy Golden.
Yeah, I mean, he might get like 40 targets. 40, 50 targets. But,
wow.
He did.
So you're telling me I shouldn't draft him in our rookie draft that's going on right now?
I mean, I might take him in the 4th round. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like him as a player. But that being said,
yes.
The Redskins, I think they threw the ball the least number of times. They're either the least or the second least.
What do you want from his prorated stats?
Receptions and yards.
106 targets, 66 receptions, 1,500. Wow, dude. 1,050 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Okay.
That's prorated.
That's pretty solid season for a rookie, by the way.
Very efficient.
A rookie last year.
Good heavens.
Yeah, the Redskins only threw the ball 479 times all of last year.
Yeah.
I expect that number to go up. I don't think
at least a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they're going to throw the ball like the most in the NFL, but they might have like about 500. They're still going to be like probably bottom half in the league, but I don't think they're going to be the least amount in the league for passing attempts. So that number will go up.
Yeah.
They also lose. Let's see, what's his name? Calvin Hartman. He tore his ACL.
Yep.
He had about 44 targets last year, so they're going to lose that. I think Steven Sims will probably
recoup
get
that.
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
He had 56 targets last year. Let's say he might get like 70 targets.
70 to 90 is probably safe.
Chris Thompson is also gone. He had 58 targets in 11 games last year.
Darius Geis, baby.
If you want to say Gibson is going to replace that,
no.
Sure.
No, Darius Geis.
Okay, or Darius Geis. Whoever you want to say. One of the running backs will replace, or maybe both of them combined.
I need Geis.
That, sure. Either way, this still leaves more targets.
No, it's true. It's now that you look at it.
Lot. There's still like
I want to pull up
40,
my projections.
There's still like 30, 40 targets left for Mclaurin. And he is also taking that year 2 jump. And not to mention the fact that Haskins last year, when he finally started to get into a rhythm the last 2 games.
Yeah.
In the last 3 games before he got injured, Terry McLaurin was the wide receiver 6 in half PPR. For that 3-game stretch, which is a very small sample size, obviously, but it showed what they were capable of doing this year. I think Mclaurin has a chance to get like 130, 140, 100, depending on how much the Redskins throw the ball. Like if they throw the ball a lot more, I mean, he could easily get like 150 targets. Like it all depends on how much the Redskins throw the ball, but I'm going to bet they don't throw the ball an insane amount, but it's going to be more than what it was last year.
Yeah.
I think Mclaurin will get like 135, 140 targets.
He just
and if he does that, it's possible.
I think the hard conversation that you have to have is right now. So the projections that I have are 572 passing attempts next year for the Redskins, and that could definitely be more around
500
like
what?
572. So that's a lot. So that I think that's just me like basing it off of the Washington Redskins. Well, they're not even that anymore. By the way, complete side note. You know, there's 2 names floating around.
Sure, I keep calling them the Washington Redskins, but we know that
the Washington Red Wolves. That's like the favorite right now.
That's interesting.
Yeah, okay. And then the Washington. What is it?
They want to keep the
Washington
same
Generals or something like that. I don't know.
That's so generic.
It really is. Anyway, so I'll just say the Washington Redskins.
Washington football team.
I'm worried about Dwayne Haskins, and I'm worried about mostly that. Yeah, he sucks. He's not that bad. I think Dwayne Haskins is actually going to have a much better year than people anticipate. He's a pocket passer, and last year he really wasn't thrown into a good situation. And I'm interested to see what the Redskins do with Dwayne Haskins in this offense and all that stuff. But when you look at like, I gave Steven Sims 90 targets and Antonio Gandy Golden like 83. So I was heavily like you could pull easily pull 20 targets off those 2 guys. I'm being conservative. I can't go all the way in on my projections, dude. But no, you could easily pull 20 targets off those 2 guys alone, and give them to Terry McLaurin, and he would have 150 targets. And I just want to throw it around because right now I have him projected based on his 14, 15 yards per reception last year, his 8 touchdowns. I mean, I projected him at 8 touchdowns, so I think he'll finish with the same. I think he finished with the same amount last year. But anyway, if you were to peg him at 150 in my projections, I'll just change it to 150 to give you that. He is at 92 receptions, 1,208 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that's 214 total fantasy points. That's just with 150 targets. And I gave him a lower amount of efficiency than he had last year. So if you bump him up to 15 yards per reception, he's at 231 in the fantasy point total, which just gets him in the top 5. Like it easily could happen. Yep. The biggest problem with him finishing the top 5 is that most top 5 wide receivers have a quarterback that can throw more than 25 touchdowns. I don't know that Dwayne Haskins does that. Maybe he comes out, shocks us all, has a great season. I don't know. If that happens, Mclaurin is the best buy in fantasy football this year. Like I'll tell you that right now.
I don't even think, but which is why I don't have Mclaurin ranked that high, is because I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think Haskins is.
But the safe projection for me is 192, and that's still.
Yeah, I think I have him projected at 195, so pretty much the same as you.
Yeah.
In that range. Yeah, but he's definitely got that upside.
I think it is a safe, bold prediction. It's not really a safe, bold prediction. It's actually hot. Top 5. You could have said like top 8.
Come on, give me credit. It's spicy.
It is spicy. Let's talk about some news really quickly, and then we will conclude the show. So if you on YouTube, I can see the analytics of when you guys stop watching, and this is usually it. So we'll just talk about the news really quickly. Derrick Henry signed a 4-year, $50 million contract right before the deadline of when you could sign a contract extension before the season. I think you have it opens up in the middle of the season or after week 4. Or you can I don't know the exact number of weeks that you have to wait in order to start negotiating long-term contracts again. But the window ended last week, and Derrick Henry signs a 4-year contract. He is now I believe a top 5 paid running back in fantasy football. Does he deserve it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Market value. Yeah,
I don't think any running back really deserves that kind of
No, I don't either.
Money,
but like
anyway.
For the market value and what he did in the playoffs last year, yeah.
Yeah, and Darrington Evans is dead.
Yep, unfortunately.
Pretty much. What is Deion Lewis last year? Like RB50, RB 75. Like, yeah, get out of here with
He's
him.
a good handcuff though, because if Henry gets hurt at
all, no one else there behind him. No one. Buccaneers Ronald Jones says he added 6 to 8 pounds of muscle this offseason. I like that. I'm gonna be laughing my butt off when Keyshawn Vaughn is like absolutely a nobody.
I think they're
gonna use him, but
they're definitely gonna use him. But he's not gonna be worth what people are like saying. Like I think every time 7th or 8th round in mock drafts,
every time I talk about him, I totally forget like where he was drafted. 3rd round. I just don't like. I especially this year, 3rd and 4th round picks. As much as we want to talk about and get excited about them having success this year, it's gonna be hard for them
he's just
to
gonna play
earn
the
a
Peyton
role.
Barber role. Is pretty much what it's.
I think he's gonna play the Peyton Barber role minus 30, 40 carries.
Yeah. You think it's? I would love that because I like Ronald Jones, but
I would just say buy Ronald Jones in the middle of the.
He definitely is a good buy for where he's going.
I don't like off-season hype, so I don't care that he added 6 to 8 pounds of muscle. I'm glad they said of muscle, because then I'd just be confused. What are you, Eddie Lacy? 6 to 8 pounds.
Zeke like 2 years ago when he was on that.
Zeke can eat as much as he wants. Bro, he's still eating Chick-fil-A.
That's true.
Mike Florio reports there's a lot of news surrounding the NFL starting and rumors, and I boiled everything down to the most recent rumors about COVID-19, and I put them all in this list. So we'll quickly list them, and then we'll talk about a couple of things to end the show. But Mike Florio reported that reports that there are the players who test positive this season for COVID-19. They're going to be placed on a list. A new report came out that said that it's going to be it's going to be on the commissioner's exempt list for a minimum of 3 weeks.
3 weeks is a lot.
Yeah, that's a long time. Now, if you play, 2 games in 3 weeks, then you can come back. But that is a long time. I think that was more the players pushing it, and
you're gonna need a good bench this year in redraft.
Yeah,
it's gonna be really important.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, handcuffs might be great. Like you're seeing in drafts right now, handcuffs are going far too high on the boards. Which in a normal year I'd be like, you idiots. But this year it's worth it. It's like if you have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook, or like I've been scooping up Boston Scott, which sounds ridiculous, but he had good games when Miles Sanders wasn't playing at the end of the season last year. So it was like get your handcuffs like yesterday and make sure that, you get opportunities during the season to have success if somebody gets COVID-19.
What if half of an NFL roster just gets COVID?
I highly doubt that that'll happen, but here's the difference between the teams. So the NBA is going to start up. Baseball starting up this week. Hockey, what are they at the end of the month or in August?
They're starting, August 1st.
So all of these teams, they're doing the similar situation where they have bubbles. I don't know if baseball is doing. I think they're traveling. I'm not sure. Basketball and hockey, I believe they're doing bubbles where they're putting everyone in one location, and they're putting everyone in like centralized locations across the country, and they're just having them all play their games at one like facility. And they're making it so that you're not going to the outside world and getting in contact with other people and getting sick or getting COVID-19 and playing. The NFL has nothing to do with this bubble talk. They're going to travel all over across the country. They're going to get on planes. They're going to do what they want when they get to their locations, go to stores. Like they're going to be living life like normal and playing football like normal, except no fans in the stands. So with that being said, how many guys are going to get COVID based on that? Are they going to be forced into a situation where they have to play in a bubble? But there's so many games. This is 30. All the other leagues have 30 teams. This league has 32 of them, and they all play at once. So it's going to be very difficult to have a bubble. So they're just going to have to play, and whoever gets COVID is whoever gets COVID. I don't think a whole team will get contracted with it because
I hope not.
Right now, a new report came out right before we went on to record that said that the NFL has reached an agreement with the NFLPA that essentially states that if it was based on testing, but so what they're going to do for the first 2 weeks of training camp, I believe, is test every single day when you come in. And then if they are under 5% of the league having COVID-19, then what'll happen is they'll switch it to 2 times a week, I believe. So it's like a merit-based system of like making sure that a player, they're not having 5% of the league test positive. Like I highly doubt that everyone, if they're testing 2 times a week or 3 times a week or 4 times a week, I have a hard time believing that all of a sudden 25 tests will come back positive in 1 week.
Yeah.
It'll be a slow progressive thing, but
for sure.
Think about the amount of tests they're going to be doing. You're not even talking about you're not talking about just the players. You're talking about the coaching staffs. You're talking about the camera people, like everyone involved. It's going to be insane. This is going to be quite the operation. But anyway, as far as the response to the COVID-19 list, just be on the lookout and be prepared. You're going to need some depth this year. I would not be surprised if some of these games, like in our league, just a basic QB1, 1 QB, 2 running back, 2 wide receivers, flex, running back, defense, tight end, that kind of league. They're going to go from scoring and have PPR like 130 points in a week to like 70 because of COVID-19. But anyway, Mike Florio reports it's very likely that the preseason is only 1 game. I think they agreed on that and the thing I was just talking about. So there'll be at least 1 preseason game. And there was some questionable rumors to continue COVID-19. I think it's the last COVID point. But there were some questions around the league, according to some managers and owners. They were questioning whether or not training camp would start on time. It is being reported that the veterans will officially report to training camp on Tuesday, July 28th. So that is solidified. That's happening. They are not backing out of that. They're going to report.
Okay. Good.
I don't know if it's state by state. I don't know if that's going to change. Florida's getting killed right now. Texas is getting killed right now, and California's getting killed. So do those people choose to go outside the state and do training camps elsewhere? Probably, maybe. I don't know what their plans are, but we'll see what happens with that. Training camp starting July 28th, which is 8 days away.
Thankfully.
And then NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. Do you have any other thoughts on COVID, by the way, before we just move on?
No, I'm
sick and tired of freaking talking about it.
I'm tired of actually hearing about it, to be honest.
Ian Rappaport reports that Raheem Mostert spoke to a high-ranking member of the 49ers organization to, quote, clear the air, unquote, and, quote, get on the same page moving forward, unquote. So
They'll find an agreement.
Yeah, I think as far as like here's my thing. If Mostert plays this year, you're willing to draft him at the location that he's been getting drafted.
I'd probably rather draft somebody else, to be completely honest with you, but I don't think it's
I've been fading on him a little bit lately, but I don't know if that's because he got a little greedy.
I mean,
you're an undrafted free agent that doesn't even know if he has a starting role. Like,
but he's the starting running back making $1 million. Like he's not even asking for like $10 million. He's asking for like $3 million.
Yeah, it's true. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's greedy. I just said he's greedy. So never mind. Whatever, dude. Whatever.
He's not.
Because we were talking about how Mostert was a really, really great buy, and a lot of people believe that. I watched a video from Kyle Yates from Fantasy Pros today.
Yep.
And he was saying to buy Raheem Mostert. He was a must have or must draft this year. Just based on they're going to rotate running backs like they always do, but based on the ceiling that you might get from Mostert. So I think the ADP is going to fluctuate heavily on this kid because of just the fact that he's not. We don't know if he's even going to be on the 49ers, because if he's not on the 49ers, he's just garbage.
Yeah.
Wrap him up and throw him away. If he goes to Miami, he can join Matt Breida. But right now, his ADP has him at, let me just pull it up. He's going at pick 58, which is in 12 team, the 5th round.
That's around
a little bit too early. I would take him in the 6th. But sure. I'm curious to see where he goes in our league and where he ends up for other people when everyone starts drafting in 2 weeks. But anyway, and the final piece of news, Antonio Brown tweeted cryptically on Twitter that he's done playing football, that he's going to retire. Now, he did this in 2019. Okay. He said that he was going to retire and that the NFL, he's not going to play for the white man anymore, I think is what he said. And he went off about how, the owners are crap and all that stuff. So it was him being emotional. This time it sounded like he's legitimately just done playing football. It sounds like he's I
think it's probably due because he realizes...
He's not getting any
I don't think anybody's going to sign him.
Yeah.
To be honest, so...
Do you think he's actually done?
Yeah, I do. Do you not?
I think Seattle might sign him and crush the DK Metcalf shares.
I think if somebody gets injured, if Metcalf got hurt in training camp, I think it's possible.
I think it's if Antonio Brown gets an offer from a team like the 49ers or the Bucks or somebody wants him, Patriots come back and they say, "Oh, we want you to come here." If somebody signs him, right? I think he ends up taking the offer and playing. I don't know how serious. If he starts filing papers, Gronk never filed his retirement papers.
Yeah.
Which is why he could come back so easily. So if AB files his retirement papers, he's probably done. That means he's legitimately looking into it. But if it's been 3 weeks and he still hasn't filed anything and Antonio Brown's just tweeting away, I think he's just done with trying to keep up a good act.
Right.
To be honest with you. But anyway, that'll complete the news for this episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. We had bold predictions. We had the news. Hopefully you got a lot of good information and content out of this. Please, 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 I beg you to drive by the draft guide. Leave a comment, your favorite bold prediction, and be sure to listen on Thursday where we talk about forgotten players. See you on Thursday.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.